All right, let's talk about the Greater Toronto Area housing market. Because if you've been glancing at the financial headlines lately, you know things are shifting at warp speed. It can be incredibly tough to separate all that noise from what actually impacts your wallet. So in today's Explainer, we're cutting right through the jargon. We're going to break down exactly what the 2026 real estate landscape looks like for you, relying on some really fresh, boots-on-the-ground insights from local expert and realtor Manpreet Chohan. Our goal today? Absolute clarity. Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. The big, flashing headline across the financial world right now is 2.25%. The Bank of Canada is officially holding its policy interest rate at a very encouraging 2.25%. Now, on the surface, I know this feels like a massive win for the economy. It sounds incredibly low, right? Like, this is the stability from the central bank we've all been desperately hoping for. But as anyone out there who is actively shopping for a home in the GTA knows all too well, the central bank's policy rate isn't exactly the number you see printed on your mortgage paperwork when you finally sit down at the lender's desk. There's this huge disconnect between the macro-level news you hear on TV and the reality in your actual neighborhood. And boom, here is that jarring reality. Approximately 6.09%. That is where the posted 5-year fixed mortgage rate is sitting right now. Pretty massive jump from that 2.25% we were just celebrating, isn't it? And honestly, this specific gap is the central tension for buyers today. You hear all about these low policy rates, but when you actually go to secure your financing, you're handed a rate closer to 6%. It's wildly frustrating. You're probably sitting there asking yourself, where on earth is the rest of that percentage coming from?
Well, to understand that noticeable gap, we kind of have to look at the stepping stones. And that brings us to the current prime rate, which is at 4.45%. Think of this as the crucial bridge, the middleman between the Bank of Canada's core 2.25% policy and what you and I actually experience in the retail banking world. So we start at 2.25, we jump up to a prime of 4.45, and then we eventually find our way to that 6% fixed rate. But, and this is important, how you experience these numbers depends entirely on the specific type of mortgage you decide to carry.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what's happening behind the scenes. Let's completely strip away all the banking jargon for a second. You basically have two paths. With a fixed mortgage, your rate doesn't just blindly follow whatever the Bank of Canada is doing. Instead, it's tightly tied to bond yields. So if the bond market is feeling jittery, your rate is going to stay stubbornly elevated near that 6% mark. On the flip side, variable mortgages actually benefit directly and almost immediately from those lower policy rates. If the Bank of Canada drops rates further, your variable rate drops right along with it. Which leads us perfectly into a fantastic, really grounding insight from our source material. Local expert Manpreet Chohan states it pretty plainly. Affordability has improved compared to 2024, but buyers are still not seeing the ultra-low rates of previous years. And honestly, that validates exactly what so many of you are feeling out there. Yes, conditions have absolutely shifted in a positive direction. It's objectively way better than the massive affordability squeeze we lived through at the peak of 2024. But we kind of have to collectively adjust our expectations here. Those crazy, rock-bottom, pandemic-era rates, they are firmly in the rearview mirror. Waiting around hoping for a 1 or 2% mortgage is simply not a viable strategy for 2026.
But wait, here is where we actually get to reframe the entire narrative. Because those elevated fixed rates we were just stressing about, they've actually created this massive, unexpected silver lining for buyers in 2026. Because higher borrowing costs naturally keep some casual, less prepared buyers on the sidelines, we are finally seeing a bump in what everyone has been begging for: actual inventory and real negotiation opportunities. If you are financially ready to step into the GTA market today, you aren't forced to take whatever you can get in some frantic, blind bidding war. You actually have choices. You have the time to, actually do a home inspection. And most importantly, you have the leverage to negotiate on the purchase price and the terms. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is seeing who actually holds that leverage right now. Because let's be real, not every buyer is going to be able to capitalize on these opportunities. The data shows us that a strong buyer today has 3 absolute non-negotiable traits. First off, they have rock-solid mortgage pre-approvals in hand. They aren't guessing what they can afford, they've got the receipts. Second, they have super clear budgets. They know their absolute ceiling and they refuse to let emotions push them past it. And third, flexibility. Maybe they can accommodate a seller's weird closing date to secure a much better purchase price. In the 2026 market, your level of preparation literally equals your level of power.
So the crucial point is knowing exactly how to translate all that preparation into daily action. If you want to be that empowered buyer, here is your 4-step checklist to crush it in this current landscape. Step 1,
Get pre-approved before you ever set foot in an open house. Lock that baseline in. Step 2. Compare multiple lenders. Seriously, do not just blindly accept the very first rate your primary bank throws your way. Shop around. Step 3. Focus intensely on your actual affordability. Calculate those monthly carrying costs, factoring in that gap we talked about earlier, and make sure you can actually sleep at night with that payment. And step 4, work with an experienced local realtor. You need someone who truly understands these micro markets in the GTA to help you spot where the real deals are hiding.
Just before we wrap things up, I want to give a massive shout out to the source of this intelligence. This data comes directly from local expert Manpreet Chohan at Royal Canadian Realty. It's dedicated folks operating with that turning dreams into addresses philosophy who really help us make sense of these intimidating economic shifts. If you want to dig deeper into this specific 2026 market analysis, definitely check out manfreightrealtor.com.
Which brings us to the ultimate question for you today. Are you financially ready to trade ultra-low rates for ultimate negotiation power? Because really, that's the 2026 GTA real estate market in a nutshell. No, you aren't getting a 2% mortgage. But because of that, you just might finally get the house you actually want at a price you helped dictate without fighting off 20 other desperate offers. It's a trade-off. Weigh your personal budget, take a look at the growing inventory out there, and decide for yourself if this unique window is the one you've been waiting for. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep preparing, and I'll catch you on the next one.